The January transfer window opens in just a couple of weeks, and today we are talking about 5 American players who need to move, 5 American players who should move, and 5 American players for whom it would be nice to move. What up, guys? I'm Pete Dalthit, host of the 11 Yanks Breakdown Show. Welcome. We talk about all things in the American soccer landscape, 2, sometimes 3 videos a week. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe. If you've been here before, as most of you probably have, smash that like button for me. Helps other people to find us. Let's go. Okay, so before we dive into this, I'm gonna say this. There is no Christian Pulisic in this video. So if you clicked on this video hoping to hear about Christian Pulisic and how he needs to move, he's not in these 15 players, guys. He just got back from a long series of injuries. He's been largely injury prone for the last 2 years. And I know he didn't play in the last game against Leeds, but we as a fan base have a tendency to overreact sometimes. And I think it's important for Pulisic to stay healthy for a consistent period of time and build some rhythm and see how he performs and see what Tuchel does with him. I know as fans we're biased towards Christian Pulisic, but we need to not overreact to the fact that he isn't starting right now. It takes time to build trust with a coach, to show a coach that you belong, that you're reliable, that you can stay healthy, that you can be part of his plans long term, and that he can build around you. Christian Pulisic has to do that with Thomas Tuchel, and that's going to take some time. Now, if we get to the summer and he still is not playing regularly, he's not getting enough playing time at Chelsea, we can talk about different things. He might transfer this January. I'm just saying I'm not putting him on a list of 15 guys who need to transfer. I think Christian should stay there until the summer and try to work his way through and then reevaluate come the summer. Okay, so these are the categories we have. Must move, all right? This is for guys whose current situation is actually harming their career. Should move. 5 more guys who it would be good for their development to move, or it'd be the right time for them to move, but maybe not absolutely crucial. Staying where they are isn't really harming them. It might be limiting their ceiling a little, but it isn't actively harming them. Would be nice to move. These are guys who it could be good for them, but probably won't happen. Like if they got a transfer to the right place, that would be great, but very likely they're not going to move and are probably fine where they are for right now. Okay, so let's dive in, and number 1 on the list is Matthew Hoppe, the 21-year-old Real Mallorca center forward. He has been completely frozen out at Real Mallorca, and the kid needs minutes. It was a pretty poor move from the start. Actually, all of this goes back to him signing a contract extension at Schalke just 2 months before he was a free agent, which made a move for him difficult because it limited his options. There are some things with his agent going on that I don't really want to get into, but let me just say the reason he's not playing at Real Mallorca has nothing to do with his quality as a player. He did start against Real Madrid and put in a decent enough performance that made me think he should be getting more minutes than he's getting. And I know he's injured right now, or at least that's what they're saying. Don't even get me started on what's coming out of that club. American ownership at that club needs to step up and try to get him a loan somewhere. I know he signed a contract with them, but he should be getting a loan, even if it's to MLS. He needs to be getting minutes. He needs to be playing regularly, and it is very, very doable. It's going to be a real problem for the kid if he's not playing at Real Mallorca. At this point, he needs to just be playing regular minutes. He could be competing for a backup striker spot in Qatar, but he needs to be playing throughout 2022 to get back into Greg Berhalter's plans. Number 2 is Bryan Reynolds, the right back at AS Roma. Now, it was tough for Bryan Reynolds because he moved a year ago to Roma in January, was playing regularly for Roma and starting to develop until the infamous Jose Mourinho came. And speaking of Jose Mourinho, we all know that he doesn't like young players. We all know that he prefers experienced players. But he had a very interesting quote about Bryan Reynolds not long after he played a game. He said, "I put Reynolds because he was the only fullback. If Ibanez had been on the bench, I would have put him, but he wasn't there." So that's my terrible impression of Jose Mourinho. But the point is, he does not appear to rate Bryan Reynolds. Now, Bryan Reynolds is 20 years old. He has a lot of things he's good at. He still has things he needs to improve on. He's only played 92 minutes this season, and 90 of those minutes were in the Europa Conference League, which is essentially the 3rd division of European competition. So he really isn't in the plans. He's not playing much. Hopefully he can get a loan somewhere. He's in USMNT camp now. I'm hoping that he starts against Bosnia on Saturday, and that maybe a good performance will motivate a few people, maybe even a couple of MLS teams to come in. Could he go back to Dallas? and play there until the summer while Roma figure out where he's going to go. At this point, he just needs to play back to MLS, Serie B, literally anywhere at this point, yo. So clearly, Jesse Pinkman is very passionate about Bryan Reynolds getting a move. Third is Taylor Booth, okay, 20 years old, still playing in the German 4th division, okay? The only time he's played for Bayern is 22 minutes in the DFB Pokal, but that was against a 5th division team. Now, he's a 6, and he's a very interesting type of 6. He's very technical, very smooth with the ball at his feet. Gonna have to improve the defensive side of his game. Where should Taylor Booth go? Again, there's so many places to go from the German 4th division. Even if he just went to Austria or Portugal, Holland I can see being a good place, maybe Belgium. Obviously, all of this will be on loan. I don't expect him to be at Bayern long term, but for him to get a move, he's going to have to get a loan to a better team because playing in the 4th division is not helping him. He'd be better off at RSL right now, to be honest. Not saying he shouldn't have moved, but he does need to get that move and need to go somewhere else. He could almost go anywhere and it would be an upgrade on what he's doing right now. Number 4, Jose Gallegos. Now, Jose Gallegos has been in USL for 3 years. He started off as a winger before, but interestingly, he's been more of a central midfielder this year. He's very technical, reminds me a lot of Richie Ledesma, but he's 20 years old now, okay? And having to be at USL for 3 years isn't helping him. He's outgrown it, and he needs to be pushed. He needs to be playing at a higher level and to get outside of his comfort zone a little bit. Where should he go? I mean, there are so many places in Europe. He could even go to MLS and that would be an upgrade. Although I don't think that's really in his plans. I do think he wants to be somewhere else long term. He's had a couple of training stints here and there, but no real strong interest yet. The kid needs to get out of USL and January is the best time to go before a new season starts. Number 5, Eric Palmer-Brown, still technically a Manchester City defender. All right, moved to Troyes, or Troyes, I'm not sure how you say it in French, so pardon me if you're French and you don't like my accent. Moved there in the summer, hasn't really played. I think 89 minutes all season long. I think Ligue 1 just might be a level too high for him. You know, I think Eredivisie could be good, Belgium would be good. Remember, he's a Manchester City player, so they have multiple possible options where he could be loaned out to. All right, now we are in the should move, okay? So remember, these are guys who don't absolutely have to move, but it'd be a good time for their development, just not absolutely crucial. First up is Miles Robinson, okay? He's been in MLS now for 4 years. He has accomplished everything domestically, is now a Gold Cup winner, a USMNT starter. I just think he's starting to stagnate a little bit in MLS because the level is not high enough to push him. He is the answer to the question, what if our best athletes played soccer? He's an amazing athlete, and that makes him an amazing defender 1v1. The problem is, he needs to still work on some things to really get to a top level defensively. His reading of the game and his distribution with the ball at his feet are both things that, while they're not terrible, definitely need to be improved. Oftentimes, he'll use his athleticism to cover for a mistake in terms of positioning or reading of the game, and you can get away with that, right? In MLS, you're not going to get away with that at a higher level. And that's why he needs to get up to a higher level so he can learn, so he can improve, so he can be pushed. Now, it's important he goes to a level that's low enough that he will play regularly because we want one of our better center backs playing before Qatar, so he shouldn't go to Manchester United or something, but a reasonable level that is above MLS where he will still get regular minutes. Next up is Brenden Aaronson, who has now been at Salzburg for a full year after moving from the Philadelphia Union, has 10 goals and 12 assists in that year, has been one of the best attackers at Salzburg, okay? Very comfortable, needs to be pushed. Manuel Vet from Transfer Market reported that he is considered Leipzig ready by the powers that be over in Germany, so it'll be interesting to see if that happens. If he goes to Leipzig, it could make room for Caden Clark to get a loan to Salzburg, and I think that would be great for all parties involved. You know, the counter argument to Brenden Aaronson moving now would be that technically Salzburg are still in the Champions League, whereas Leipzig aren't. The counter argument to that is that Leipzig are in the Europa League and probably have an opportunity to make a deep run here now with Dominic Tedesco in charge, and that could be really good for him too, whereas Salzburg are probably going to be knocked out in the next round. So I do think he should move. It's not just Champions League and Europa League, it's the level he needs to be playing at, week in and week out, competing with better players in the team and playing against better opponents. Next up is Ulysses Llanez. He's come out of some rough moments, but the kid is grinding. He is tough. Okay, he still has a ton of talent. I think he's sort of slipped outside of a lot of people's radar just because he's playing in the Austrian second division right now. So I understand that. But remember, the talent is still there. You know, young players' trajectory isn't linear. There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be good and bad moments, good and bad form. But he seems to have the mentality to get through it. He's still just 20 years old, had 3 goals and 3 assists for St. Pölten this season. Remember, he's still on loan from Wolfsburg. He could still go back there. I don't think he's ready for Wolfsburg yet. But I do think he needs to be playing at a higher level than the Austrian second division, even if it's just the Austrian first division. Hopefully he could get loaned out somewhere in the first division, or even maybe somewhere in Switzerland. I can see second division in France or Spain or Italy, even Germany could be an option. The counter argument is that for a kid who's had a lot of instability, he was at Wolfsburg, wasn't playing there, went over to Holland, wasn't really getting all the time he needed there, came back to the US, had an injury, had some personal situations. Maybe it's better for him to stay a full year at one club just to kind of gain some momentum and stability. That could be very good for him. Next up is Sergino Dest. Now, Barca are kind of a mess right now. There's a lot of bizarre things going on at that club. They've spent poorly. They've overspent. They don't have a ton of money. This Xavi guy is a very inexperienced coach. Yes, I know he was a legend as a player, but really the majority of his coaching experience is in Qatar. Is he ready for this level? I'm not sure. Xavi is also friends with a lot of guys in that locker room who are well past it now, but that friendship does seem to sound, from reports that I've heard, to be kind of getting in the way of him doing what's best for the team, trying to get rid of guys like Sergino Dest and Frankie de Jong, while keeping some of the older guys like Busquets, Piqué, bringing back Dani Alves. That was just a very bizarre move. I think that Sergino Dest needs to move on. He still has things he needs to improve on, specifically defensively, and I just don't know that Barcelona are the kind of club to help him with that right now. They seesaw back and forth between playing him as a right winger, as a fullback, and while I think it was the right decision for him to leave Ajax when he did, it could be time for him to move on. And if the right club comes along, I don't know if it's going to be Bayern. I could see him going to a team like Dortmund as well. It'll be interesting to see if he moves. If he doesn't, maybe in the summer. But could be a good time for Sergino to kind of leave behind the mess that is Barcelona and move forward. Next up is James Sands, who has now been in MLS for 4 years. He's played as a center back, as a midfielder. He's won MLS Cup, got significant minutes with the national team in the Gold Cup. You know, I think he's comfortable in MLS, and I think it'd be a good time for him to get a move, go somewhere else, somewhere in Europe, try to challenge himself. From a distribution point of view, I think he's better than Kellyn Acosta. It's the defensive side of the game that he needs to work on, specifically his reading of the game, and more specifically, when there is a counterattack on for the opponent, his ability to delay that counterattack through sharp positioning and reading of the game is something I still think can be improved. But hey, we're 1 year out of Qatar, and he should be trying to challenge Kellyn Acosta for minutes. And one of the ways he could do that is going to Europe and improving as a player. Now we are in would be nice to move, where it's not absolutely necessary for them to move and probably won't happen, but would be nice to think about. Ricardo Pepi. Now I know this has been the longest transfer saga out there. Pepi is still just 18-year-old. He's only spent 1 year as a starter for FC Dallas, so I wouldn't hate it if he stayed there for 1 more year. We can't ignore that Qatar is just a year away, and that what happens with players' careers over the next year will have a massive, massive impact on what happens for the national team in Qatar. If Pepi goes, it has to be to a right club that is going to develop him, play him, give him minutes, and trust him. Because he may not go into Qatar as ready as we want him to be. Like I said, it's nice if he gets the move, but I'm fine with him staying another year at Dallas. Daryl Dike is up next. Now, his situation is a little different than Pepi. He's 3 years older than him, 21. It's kind of an interesting dichotomy with Daryl Dike because he needs to improve technically. That's, I think, his biggest weakness. The problem is that the kind of player that he is, teams that want him may not be the best for his technical development. For example, at Barnsley, they played very direct, very aerial, and that didn't really benefit him technically. I'm hearing that West Brom want him, and I think going back to the championship would be fine. I would prefer West Brom just because they try to play a little bit more than a team like Barnsley. The real question on Daryl Dike getting a move is, does Orlando price him out? They haven't always been the best at letting players go. We saw that with Kyle Larin in the past. Here's the thing that's important about Daryl Dike. He could be challenging for a spot in Qatar, not as a starter, but as something different off the bench. If you need a late goal and you want to play a little more direct, a little more route one, get more crosses into the box, maybe the opponent is defending in a low block, trying to hold on to a lead, that's where I think Daryl Dike could be really useful. The other guy that's similar is Jordan Pefok, but I just think that Dike is a little less static than Pefok. I know that the Champions League goal against Manchester United sort of gives Pefok supporters a false sense of who he is, but really, guys, I actually think Daryl Dike is a better player with a higher ceiling. He's also about 5 years younger. So we'll see if he gets a transfer. I think it would be okay if he played in Orlando for another year, but I do think it's time for him to move on and to really push himself and to improve technically. Next up, George Bello. Like Miles Robinson, Bello's been in Atlanta for quite a few years now, but unlike Miles, Bello hasn't really improved all that much. He's still very one-footed and kind of one-dimensional, technically quite limited. Look, I'm not super high on Bello, and I've said this before, but he's 19 years old. There's still plenty of time for him to improve. I'm just not sure that's going to happen in MLS because we haven't really seen him improve in the last 2 years. He's sort of been essentially the same player. Sam Vines is a very similar player to him, and Vines has now gone to Belgium and is going to be pushed just by virtue of being there. The competition is tougher, the stakes are higher, the coaches, generally speaking, are better. That's the other thing too, the revolving door at Atlanta probably hasn't really helped his game. I think going abroad could really benefit him. Reggie Cannon. It's been a tough start to the season for Reggie Cannon. Played just 253 minutes. He did have what Boavista was calling an undisclosed injury early in the season. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but there's some very fishy business going on at that club. Playing at Gold Cup probably didn't help him because he wasn't able to have a preseason. That's kind of one of the reasons why Luca De La Torre, I think, turned down the Gold Cup call-up. Look, he struggled this year, and part of that is Reggie Cannon is still not the best player defensively or technically, but it could also be the situation that he's at. Maybe he'll benefit from a more stable situation. He's 23 years old, not really a young guy anymore, so his next move is going to be really important in deciding what happens with his career, because he could be a guy that really improves and becomes an amazing player by the time he's 25, 26, or he could end up sort of back in MLS as just sort of a mediocre MLS lifer. Last up is Ethan Horvath. Now, I know this one is a non-starter. He isn't going to leave Nottingham Forest. Let me be very clear about that. But if he wants to get to Qatar, he needs to figure this out. He was a free agent. For him to go to a club where he wasn't going to be the starter was a very poor decision after sitting on the bench at Bruges for so long. If there is a God in heaven or luck is on his side, maybe he could get an MLS club loan for the season. I just can't see Nottingham Forest letting their second choice keeper go. There are second choice keepers all over the world who have accepted their role as being basically the number 2, but those keepers aren't usually challenging for national team minutes. Horvath has only played 3 games this year. If he doesn't start getting more game time, he probably won't make it to Qatar. That spot will probably go to Sean Johnson. Those are my 15 players who could, should, or might benefit from a move this January. Let me know your thoughts. Is there anybody I missed? Somebody's going to say John Brooks. I know it. Maybe Christian Pulisic. We can talk about that too. Let me know what you think of my list, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a great week.